Hello again people, and today we are capping off my Deltarune character breakdown series with Noelle Holiday. If you haven't seen my previous videos detailing the three main characters, the links to these videos will be in the description. I initially wasn't going to make a video surrounding Noelle because she is more of a prominent side character right now, but after many people requested it, I decided to give Noelle her time in the spotlight. This video is going to be formatted like the rest of the videos in the series. I will also dedicate an entire section of this video to the Snowgrave route. Naturally, I will discuss Noelle's involvement in it, but I also wanted to analyze the route as a whole and try to get to the bottom of why it's even in the game. With all the intros out of the way, let's begin the story of Noelle Holiday. Let's start by going over the posts from Noelle's personal blog that were shown as rewards for donations during the Spamton sweepstakes. If you've been following Deltarune for a while, you're probably already familiar with the Spamton sweepstakes, but I've been noticing a few people in the comments section not knowing what it is, so I'll take the time to briefly explain it. I'll also link the sweepstakes down in the description if you ever want to check it out for yourself. It was a charity event to help raise money for Child's Play, a charity organization that helps children play games while they're recovering in the hospital. Every donation goal that was met would unlock a potential prize that was raffled off later. Some of the charity rewards had little pieces of lore hidden within, and one of the more prominent ones is what kicked off my first Deltarune video. Some of these lore bits were pieces of Noelle's personal blog, or should I say Holiday Girl 1225. I wanted to take the time to analyze every one of these posts, starting with the conversation between her and someone else, I presume to be Birdly. To be honest, this is just an assumption, though when I look at Birdly, I just say, yeah, that dude looks like he would ask to be a mod and threaten to ban people before even becoming a mod. What I really want to analyze here is Noelle's way of talking to people on her personal blog. When the user asks Noelle to make them a mod, instead of just saying no, they make up a weird reason why they can't. This would be the first of many examples of Noelle being afraid of conflict. Another angle to this would be that she is afraid of making people upset and becoming disinterested in her blog, and her as a result. Later, when another user jumps on and asks about Dragon Blazers 2, Noelle jumps at the opportunity to get them to play it. Unfortunately, Dragon Blazers 2 does not have soccer balls in it, so the user, presumably Jockington, leaves. The next post contains a time where Noelle was talking about a game from her childhood called Cat Pedders 2, a game where you can take care of and breed cats, and with mods you can do the same with dogs, cars, and many other things. Noelle one day downloaded some incompatible mods and a single white egg appeared in her game. Initially, Noelle was afraid of the egg because it made a weird noise. She tried to get rid of it, but it just would not leave. Eventually, she started taking care of it, and afterwards, it just disappeared. This post actually reminds me of a creepypasta, so for all we know, Noelle is just making this story up. It's kind of like if someone tells you that their Pokemon cartridge is haunted or something, and they say all of their Pokemon turn into unknown and the unknown spell out the word death or something like that. If we are to believe everything in this post actually happened, then it would seem that this event is directly linked to the white eggs that we find inside the Dark Worlds. The methods of getting these eggs track. The way that Noelle received the white egg in the game was by random chance. Loading into the area with the tree is also by random chance. The only difference in these examples is that Noelle's egg vanished after she took care of it, and Chris's eggs either vanished after a new day or were able to be left somewhere. Eggs in general have been known to reference life and new beginnings. What struck me the most is what happens to make Noelle's egg disappear. She took care of it, she showed the egg compassion, she nurtured it and made it feel loved. It left her because it was happy. Honestly, I'm not sure what to make of this. The best I can come up with is that the egg was something real, something alive, and it had a special privilege over the other eggs to leave when it did. It just needed to feel like it was worth something before doing so. People have speculated that this egg went on to become Spamton. The origins of this egg come from code inside of spam emails. The spam email does reference a Hoochie Mama, which Spamton refers to Noelle as well, so I can definitely see why people have assumed this. Now we can take the chance to talk about the two entries that detail Noelle's relationship with Chris Dreamer. The two Lightners were childhood friends. They would spend a seemingly long amount of time together playing at Noelle's house. Suddenly, without warning, Chris would stop altogether and stare off into the distance, as if they were remembering something. I talked about these moments in Chris's video. It's called an absence seizure. Noelle's rationalization of these seizures gives us an idea about how she views herself. Noelle wonders if Chris would ever come by her house for her or just to play their piano. She thinks that she isn't worth the time. She thinks that people only care about what she has and what she can do instead of caring about who she is. It's almost like this post is her taking inventory of all her thoughts in her head. The last part of this entry is definitely the strangest. But when I closed my eyes, it felt like a concert just for me. A concert, a musical performance that Chris was putting on for her. I don't think Chris was playing the piano specifically for her, but I do think that's what she believes. This would begin a potential trend that we see more of in the Snowgrave route of all things, a trend where Noelle begins to blind herself to the reality of events unfolding before her. She recontextualizes the things that Chris does so that their actions appear more positive and beneficial for her. Speaking from experience, people have a tendency to have strange interpretations of the actions of people who are more on the quiet side. They see someone who is quiet and not interested in sharing their ideas or opinions openly, so they fill in the gaps themselves. The gaps are sometimes filled with negative ideas like, oh no, that person's a freak, or oh no, that person's staring off into space, they're crazy. Noelle has done something similar, just in a more positive way, to protect her own feelings. We see much later that Noelle does something similar with Birdley. She rationalizes Birdley using her to boost his grades by citing that he was nice to her when they were alone. The uncertainty of Noelle's trust in Chris's friendship is what could have led to them becoming more distant. When they were still close, Chris would pull pranks on Noelle and make her scared, but they always seemed to be close friends despite this. It would seem as if a specific series of events is what led to Noelle and Chris breaking away from each other. I am of course talking about the disappearance of Des Holiday, Noelle's older sister. A topic I have never touched on a Deltarune Theory simply because we know incredibly little about how or when she disappeared. We can only make assumptions based on dialogue between characters. Noelle, Des, Chris, and Azriel would go out into the wooded area outside of hometown to explore. Chris would mess around and play pranks on Noelle, Des would get mad at Chris, but everything changed when Des disappeared and Azriel left for college. The running theory in the community is that one time when the four were out exploring, they decided to walk inside the bunker. Inside, something happened and Des never made it out. A body was never discovered, so she was reported missing. It is heavily hinted that the disappearance happened when Noelle was still very young, so perhaps they stopped looking for her. Even when talking about Des and the cyber world, Noelle doesn't talk with a sense of urgency, but rather a mournful past tense. The disappearance of her sister still weighs on her, but seemingly it is a traumatic event that Noelle has had time to process. There is a possibility that the family hasn't given up, but like I said, we can only make assumptions. Whatever the reason was for Des's disappearance, it is clear the Holidays don't blame the Dreamers for what happened. There was no bad blood, but even so, this event has caused a split between Chris and Noelle in the past. This split could be the reason why she does not come to Chris's aid in this next post. I am of course talking about the incident which followed a class where Chris was still asleep and Noelle was leaving. She noticed that Susie was waiting behind. The newest girl post is the largest post out of the Spamton sweepstakes, and yet it doesn't really revolve around Noelle. Instead, it revolves around Chris and Susie. Noelle is simply recounting events as she witnessed them while waiting outside the classroom. It should be noted that the reliability of Noelle's recounted information is up for debate. She is a reliable narrator in this situation, however, she had limited visibility of the incident, and a limited ability to hear what they were saying. She knows that Chris said something to Susie, but she couldn't make out the words. I neglected to mention this in the Chris video, but the fact that they were aware that Noelle was outside would imply that Chris themselves possesses some kind of fourth wall breaking power that allows them to have awareness of things they normally wouldn't. Just a thought. Back to Noelle. Let's break down Noelle's actions from the get-go. Noelle is well aware that Susie has it out for Chris, and despite this, she leaves Chris behind. I just want everyone to know, I'm not here to take sides. I'm here to analyze the decisions of characters both at face value and, if the situation allows, look into a deeper emotional interpretation. That being said, I will say that the decision to leave your once best friend to the mercy of their bully, to then stay and watch, is a morally compromising one. Some would defend Noelle, stating that she waits behind to make sure Chris does not get hurt. However, this defense makes little sense. as she could 100% ensure that Chris doesn't get hurt by simply waking them up and asking them to leave with her. Also, I would like to point out that Chris does get hurt, Susie does get physical, and Noelle does nothing. Yes, I know Noelle is afraid of Susie in this context, but all of these events take place after the initially criticized event. I am not saying that Noelle should have busted back into the room guns blazing, but rather been proactive to stop the situation from happening in the first place. Like I said earlier, I'm not here to say that Noelle is a bad person for doing this, however I will analyze the fact that she did do this. Noelle is acutely aware that Susie targets Chris specifically, but also mentions how on many times she offered to switch seats with Chris, unsuccessfully. Noelle also seems to be under the impression that Susie wouldn't even do anything until she left. As much as I hate to say it, I think the reason why Noelle left Chris is because she was anticipating Susie bullying them, and she wanted to give Chris a reason to switch seats with her. She subconsciously wants Chris to get bullied by Susie, so they finally agree to switch seats with her. It's clear that Noelle wants the attention that Susie is giving Chris to be redirected at her. Noelle alludes to this twice in the post. It should also be stated that Noelle is under the impression that Chris is oblivious to Susie's bullying. You could also argue that Noelle has Chris's best interests at heart, as her end goal is to make it harder for Susie to bully them. It should also be mentioned that Noelle does mention wanting to help Chris, but then she says she feels this freezing sensation that stops her from helping Chris. Because of this wording, I can't help but think that this is a direct reference to the Snowgrave route. The influence which Chris or the player have over Noelle extends into the light world, and it's something that has been used against Noelle before. I have no idea if this is true, but the fact that the feeling goes away right after Susie leaves, combined with Chris knowing exactly where Noelle is, has me thinking that this isn't a coincidence. Noelle's wording is absolutely not helping at all, because she mentions a cold sensation, and as we all know, Noelle has ice powers when in the dark world. Either way, Noelle doesn't give her thoughts on the incident aside from changing her shampoo to a more apple-scented one. There's no reference to that in the actual game, so I wonder if Susie ever noticed. One of the reasons why I wasn't sure about doing a Noelle video is that she barely has a presence in Chapter 1. She does make up that time in Chapter 2, but for the most part we don't have anything notable to say about Noelle in the first chapter. The only notable instances are from bits of dialogue within the prologue and the epilogue. While in the classroom, you are tasked with finding a partner for your school project, and when approaching Noelle, she thoughtfully asks if you would like to make a group of 3 with her and Birdley. Saying no to this question multiple times will prompt Noelle to act accordingly, as such that she is starting to become confused. Similarly, in the epilogue, if you begin to talk to Noelle excessively, she will mention how Chris has been acting strange lately. This pattern of Noelle's concern is what tips us off to the friendship these two used to share. Despite how long it's been since they spent time together, it's clear that Noelle cares enough about Chris to make notes in changes of their behavior. Noelle is arguably the smartest kid in hometown, so it tracks that she could have the detective skills to identify these changes in behavior. Another to take from these moments are that Noelle does not think to pry into Chris's business. She shows concern, but not to the effect that it would make her warn Toriel. This has me thinking if anyone aside from Susie would ever label Chris's behavior as strange. Even by introvert standards, Chris exhibits behavior that exceeds the norm. What? Oh, you think I'm talking about the ripping the soul part out? No. If you didn't know, all introverts do that, like all the time. Like we do that every day. I'm talking more so about the disappearing, and Toriel just waves it off as something Chris does from time to time. Chris is the only human in hometown, so there is a chance that people just assume that what Chris does is normal human behavior. I highlight this to not poke fun at Chris, but to potentially explain why Noelle doesn't dig too deep into Chris's actions. Noelle's experience with humans could be very well limited to Chris, so she just assumes that all humans act this way. Noelle takes note of these behavior patterns, and she is the first to acknowledge that Chris begins to deviate from these patterns. During the Chapter 1 epilogue, you can meet Noelle, who is locked outside the gate, which leads to her home. When talking to Noelle, you have the option to simply talk to her about anything. This prompts her to ask about Chris's change in behavior. Despite lacking a long emotional connection with the human, Noelle understands Chris to a certain degree. The fact that Chris is openly walking up to her and striking a conversation without a preset goal is a major deviation in her mind. When you ask Noelle about her mother, Noelle references that she has the option to visit her mother and get the key from her. Noelle refuses to do this under the assumption that her mother will punish her for interrupting her work. This would be such a mundane and unobtrusive thing to ask your mother for, and the fact that Noelle refuses to do this would imply that there is something else going on between the two. Noelle doesn't want to talk to her mother, either for superficial reasons or more underlying ones. The surface understanding is that Noelle thinks for her mother and how demanding the mayor position is. Noelle has the means to get into her home without obstructing her mother, so she will choose this option. The implicit reason would be that Noelle is afraid of her mother. Perhaps Noelle's mother is a source of stress for her. The mayor has to keep up with public appearances, and Noelle would inevitably be forced to maintain this herself. Public officials have several eyes watching them at any given moment. This puts them under pressure to portray the ideal candidate 100% of the time, and in turn, that pressure is passed onto their family. Any shortcoming of the child will reflect negatively onto the parent, and thus Noelle was raised with this added pressure, and it causes Noelle a lot of stress. So much so that even the idea of asking her mother for a spare house key is off the table. The last notable thing regarding this conversation with Noelle is that she asks about Susie and what she likes. If you say she likes chalk, then later Noelle will produce a gift of chalk for Susie. Strangely, this is the only option that will inspire Noelle to give Susie a gift. From here, we will jump ahead to Chapter 2. When we happen across Noelle in the Dark World, Noelle is hunched over, presumably incapacitated, either from being attacked or after exerting herself. Leading up to Noelle, the surrounding area implies that a battle has recently taken place. When Noelle meets up with Chris, she is completely green to the ins and outs of fighting someone. So, who fought in this battle? The running theory within the community is that Noelle was so shocked from entering the Dark World that she instinctively lashed out to protect herself. Noelle is capable of magic, Snowgrave being one of the notable ones. Noelle is capable of casting the only known fatal spell within Deltarune so far. As far as power levels go, this would put her above any secret boss we have encountered so far. Jevil and Spamton are strong, but none of their attacks are a one-hit kill. I am not saying that Noelle used the Snowgrave spell here, but rather she used a bunch of other spells that she doesn't know. Noelle is in a daze when Susie and Chris approach. Just the sight of Susie seems to snap Noelle out of her trance. She is still too exhausted to stop herself from being captured by Queen, one of the library's computers. With how much Queen cares for Noelle's well-being and how she genuinely wants Noelle to cooperate with her really makes me wonder if Queen is a special computer. The computer lab itself only has a handful of computers, so I would imagine that Noelle chooses to use the same one often. This could have been the very same computer in which Noelle made additions to her personal blog. We've already talked about how her mother makes her feel, so the fact that she would choose the library as an escape haven would not be out of the question. The Queen could have taken note and secretly made plans to give Noelle what she wants, or at least what she thinks Noelle wants. Queen has taken it upon herself to fulfill Noelle's assumed wishes, but in reality has caused her unnecessary stress. Noelle, being unable to convey how she feels, reacts by going along with Queen's plans. Noelle, as someone who seeks to end conflicts before they start, chooses to accommodate Queen, albeit for a short period of time. Later on, we see that Noelle takes to simply avoiding Queen, much like she avoids her mother. Noelle hides when she hears Queen attempting to find her. It's clear that Noelle doesn't want anything to do with Queen's plan for world domination. There is a running theme when it comes to Noelle and the people she calls friends. Barring Chris, of course, almost every person in Noelle's life assumes Noelle's emotions and believes that they know what's best for her. Birdley and Queen are the most guilty of this. Queen has her own ultimate goal of taking over the world by making people happy or something, but Noelle is her focus. Birdley piggybacks off of Queen's intentions under the impression that he and Noelle will be able to invent a new world together. Both of these characters claim to be helping Noelle, but fail to even allow Noelle to address her problems herself. What was that saying again? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. While traveling with Noelle, you can lift her watch and she doesn't seem to mind. One single lucky person was able to get a direct replica of this watch during the Spamton sweepstakes. It's a pretty nice watch and a solid piece of Deltarune history. The items which Noelle carries are unique in the sense that they are unchanged by the Dark World. The ring Noelle was carrying remains a ring inside the Dark World, and the watch does the same. This is a strange deviation from what we were led to believe, and I can't help but question why. Perhaps the transformation is only effective on simple objects, like pencils or brushes. When a complex moving or mechanical object enters the Dark World, not only does it remain inanimate, but it retains its normal function. A watch does have a lot of small moving pieces. This doesn't explain the ring, however. A pencil becomes a sword, but a ring remains a ring, only with the added benefit of magical spells. I would be hard-pressed figuring out a consistent pattern for the rules of magic within a video game without talking directly to the creator, so really, your guess is as good as mine. The only pattern I can make is that the weapons and artifacts pertain to the character in some way. Rouse uses a scarf to partially hide himself, Susie uses the axe to attack people because it's her favorite activity, Chris can use a sword or a shield, which is the same object at different times. This is made to reference the fact that Chris can choose to resolve their problems with violence using a sword, or pacify a threat while using a shield to defend themselves. Susie is aggression, Rouse is defense, Chris is a mix between the two. Noelle is gifted with ice magic, which I found especially interesting. This could potentially mean that deep down she wants to preserve something. Imagine for a moment that Rudy would find himself within a dark world. Noelle could just freeze him to preserve him until she finds a way to heal him, or even just use one of her healing spells. The only question is, how far is she willing to go to do this? While traveling with Noelle, you stumble across several mouse puzzles where you have to guide them to their destination. Noelle is afraid of mice to the point where she jumps several feet into the air when she sees one. Noelle's musophobia is never properly explored, aside from the fact that after she is subject to exposure to several mice, she realizes that mice are nothing to fear. Exposure is a very real tactic that is used on people who have phobias. The reasons for someone being afraid of mice are conditional, most likely caused by the sudden appearance of the previously mentioned. Noelle's fears appear to be inconsistent in scale. Mice make her shriek in fear, but other things like needles do not. Perhaps the outlier comes from her time spent in the hospital with her father. Medicine, and therefore needles, are what's helping her father survive, so therefore she's not afraid of them. Fear is a big part of Noelle's life, but it doesn't seem like something she avoids. While visiting her father in Chapter 1, he explains that throughout her entire life, Noelle has been afraid of several things. It's natural for children to be fearful considering that their entire life is filled with new experiences, and Noelle doesn't seem to emulate this fear as often as she used to. Throughout Chapter 2, there are notable examples of Noelle expressing fear, but most of these instances are very reasonable. Queen is planning on permanently altering Noelle's face, so therefore she doesn't want to be captured. Susie is known to have a history of anger, so naturally most people are afraid of her, Noelle included. What intrigues me the most about Noelle is her reported enjoyment in being afraid. The juxtaposition of fear giving Noelle a sense of comfort is a deliberate choice, presumably made to give us insight into her upbringing. Fear is an intense emotion, an emotion which can trigger a fight or flight response. When you enter a fight or flight response, your brain releases adrenaline. Adrenaline gets your blood pumping and makes you more alert, and it has a thrilling sensation. This response actually coincides with the fact that Noelle is a reindeer. Reindeer are typically prey animals who have a higher flight response. You'll obviously know that Noelle is not an animal, she is a monster who lives in a peaceful, civilized town. As long as she doesn't play in the road, she's pretty much safe from harm. Responses like this can still happen, but Noelle can simply enjoy the increased heart rate while not having to run for her life. In a typical boring life in hometown, thrills like this flight response give a great distraction from the mundanity. Perhaps Noelle's mother is a factor in her affinity for fear. As a busy woman who is the mayor of hometown, she is constantly distracted by her work, and when she does interact with Noelle, she demands that Noelle act prim and proper to keep up appearances. We have yet to see how she acts or even what Noelle's mother looks like, so this is only conjecture. Risky and thrill-seeking behavior typically comes from a sheltered upbringing, or even an upbringing that was too structured. Noelle's mother is the mayor. She can't have her daughters doing things like sneaking off into the forest, now can she? Noelle interprets her fears as coming from nostalgia. She would watch scary movies with her sister, and even though she was scared, deaths would always make her feel better. So there is a possibility that she associates fear with a sense of comfort as a result. Perhaps the fear makes her feel like she's still with her sister. But this is just one interpretation. Not an expert. Don't take my words as therapeutic advice. I know I say it in almost every video I talk about psychology, but I just need you all to know that while this is a subject I care about, it's not something I have an authority on. Anyway, moving on. While Noelle and Chris are exploring together, they find themselves impeded by a series of mouse puzzles. The mice continuously startle Noelle, making her jump. What's intriguing about this effect is how it's used to solve the puzzles. Annoying Mouse Room 2 and 3 are only solved after identifying that Noelle jumps when a mouse crosses her path. While in Room 3, Noelle becomes aware of her own reaction to the point where she asks Chris to continue scaring her with mice, rather than Noelle just making the jump herself. While this is happening, Birdley enters the room and only perceives Chris. Birdley is a very unlikable character. From the beginning, he proudly expresses his elitist attitude towards Chris, and it seems like this attitude even extends to Noelle, his closest friend. Completely oblivious to Noelle jumping from platform to platform, Birdley begins to talk at Chris regarding Noelle. He asserts that Noelle is a simpleton, powerless to help herself, most likely stuck on a puzzle much like this one. He is entirely under the impression that he is the only one who understands her. Birdley continues by vaguely insinuating that Noelle has feelings for him, and Noelle assumes that Birdley knows about her crush on Susie. There are two big things going on in this scene. Birdley is reinforcing his perspective to maintain his sense of superiority, while Noelle is standing by allowing Birdley's words to carry weight. In this specific context, Noelle is helpless despite having the means to save herself. Whether it's Chris or the flying mice below, Noelle is left motionless, only moving when she is moved by the actions of the previously mentioned. Noelle is aware that she has the ability to jump from platform to platform, and yet she waits for the mice to scare her instead. Now would be a good time for us to talk about the codependency between Noelle Holiday and Birdley. When I say codependency, I do not mean a form of cooperation. I am actually referring to a psychological term regarding excessive emotional reliance on a partner, typically one who requires support on account of an illness or an addiction. The addiction is the attention that Birdley receives from being perceived as smart. Let's start out at the beginning. When the two monsters were very young, they entered into a spelling bee contest. Judging by their performance in the flashback, Noelle was set to win until she was told to spell one specific word: December. Birdley spells the word with ease, while Noelle collapses to the floor. The unmistakable interpretation for the cause of Noelle's failure would be that the spelling bee took place soon after Des Holiday disappeared. When hearing her sister's name spoken aloud, she is forced to face the possibility that she may never come back. Birdley had won, and the praise he received from winning the spelling bee made him feel important. It made him feel like he was seen, made him feel like he had a purpose. Birdley had felt a piece of validation for the first time in his life, and he enjoyed it so much, he became addicted to it. Birdley was never that smart, however. He was only giving off the impression that he was. Birdley is forced to turn to Noelle to help him with his grades. As we already know, the Holiday and Dreamer families began to split apart after the disappearance of Des. After the loss of her sibling and the loss of Chris, her best friend, Noelle is forced to accept Birdley's friendship, a friendship seated in a deeply unhealthy relationship. You can tell by the way Birdley regards Noelle during the mouse puzzle that he does not respect her. Friendship is a bond formed between people who have a mutual affection for each other. The kinship between Birdley and Noelle is not mutual at all. After losing her sister, I can imagine she was hard-pressed to find a reason to keep her mind off her disappearance. Years pass, they still keep up the charade because it gives them peace. Keep in mind, I may sound like I'm being harsh on Birdley, but really I can't make him take all the blame. He is a teenager after all, and by the looks of things, I would say his ego had taken several hits before this event. Going your entire life unappreciated and ignored can make a person desperate, especially at such a young age. In a codependent relationship, one person plays the role of the giver. They support and provide help to the other person at the cost of their own well-being. The spelling bee was accidental, but it was the first event that kick-started these codependent trends. Unfortunately, Noelle only enables this by continuing to support Birdley's habits. His self-entitled, pompous attitude is there because he succeeds. He has something to brag about, so he does. This would all go away if Noelle would stop helping him, and Birdley knows this. This toxic reliance on her is the reason why he is content with Queen's plan. We even see hints of this in Chapter 1. When Birdley refuses to let Chris join them for a group of 3, he straight up talks for Noelle, and she can't find the courage to stick up for herself. Despite this toxic relationship, Birdley does care about Noelle in some capacity. He does have Noelle's best interest in mind, he just had a warped idea of what those interests were. We are approaching the end of Chapter 2, where within we will witness the most of Noelle's character moments. Let's start by talking about Noelle's room. Noelle sits within her room, pondering her life while staring up at the moon. The room is littered with decor that Queen assumed Noelle would enjoy. Much like Rousey, Queen has made rooms for the Lightners. But these rooms are made for subjugation, and the contents are based off of internet searches. There is actually an overarching theme throughout all of Chapter 2 surrounding people who believe they know what the other person wants, when in fact it's impossible to assume someone's feelings 100%. It should be noted that this room is a result of what Queen believes Noelle wants, so take this analysis with the understanding that the items may have a skewed interpretation. Because, let's be honest, the Queen was a little unhinged. Noelle looks up at this strange moon. This moon resembles a normal baseball. This has me at somewhat of a loss because at no point has Noelle ever mentioned enjoying baseball or even playing baseball. This baseball resembles an attack which Queen will later use against the Fun Gang. Perhaps it was some kind of security system to stop people from coming in to rescue Noelle. Probably would have been used had Queen not been distracted by Rousey and Chris. This also could have been something that Queen just threw in because she assumed it's what Noelle likes. Don't cry, Noelle. Here, have a giant baseball. Kids like those, right? There may also be a symbolic understanding as well. For those who are unfamiliar with baseball, the object of the game is for the hitters to strike the ball which has been thrown at them. If the batter is good enough, the ball will be struck high into the air. Something so small and so high up in the air, moving at such a high speed, it is almost impossible to predict where it will land. The ball will land eventually, but it's impossible to say where. I believe this ball is made to represent her father. Last time we talked to Rudy, even he didn't know what was happening to him, so it's safe to say that Noelle is also in the dark. Rudy's story will end, but as of right now, Noelle is filled with uncertainty, just like the baseball. It will land, but there is no way to tell how close it will be when it does. To her left, we see a statue of Susie, which is obviously there because of how Noelle idolizes her. Perhaps this is made to represent that Noelle doesn't truly admire Susie, but rather a version of Susie that Noelle has come up with in her head. They don't know each other very well, and as we will see in the Ferris wheel ride very soon, Noelle has many preconceived notions regarding Susie. On the wall is a calendar where each date is marked as December 25th, the day where most people celebrate Christmas. I believe, like most of Queen's understandings of Noelle, she misunderstood what Noelle actually wanted. Remember, these rooms are made based off of internet searches. As we already know, Noelle's older sister is named Des, which is probably short for December, and the 25 is most likely her age. I am aware that this interpretation is out there and a large deviation from what people would think it is, but I believe the reason why Queen has these two pieces of information is because a person's name and their age are the first two pieces of information printed in a missing persons report. And Noelle was most likely searching for Des every single day. The more direct interpretation would be that December 25th is the day that Des went missing, but I honestly don't think that would make much sense. Christmas is important to the holidays. It's like their entire personality. I don't think they would let their kids be out and about on Christmas, even if they were spending time with friends. Susie charges in and defeats the two werewires about to take Noelle, presumably to Queen so she can enact her plan. Susie remarks in a similar fashion to the moon before them. A further conversation follows. Noelle regards the moon and relates it to the entire dark world and how strange it is. Susie tries to wave away any suspicion by telling Noelle that she is simply dreaming. Noelle simply accepts this based on Susie's actions alone. She doesn't believe that the real Susie even knows she exists. Susie wonders why Noelle believes that she doesn't care. Susie explains that it's all connected to her first day in class. Susie did not have a pencil, so Noelle shared one of hers. The friendship between Noelle and Susie has been stagnant ever since the two first met. Throughout this section, we will talk about potential deep underlying feelings between these two characters, but first I need to make something very clear. I have said this in the past, but I think I'll say it again now. I do not ship characters. While some people might get entertainment out of predicting future relationships between characters, I do not partake. I would be purposefully leaving out a meaningful part of the game's story if I did not address it, so I will. Just understand that I am only commenting on what is shown in the game and nothing more. I may speculate about deeper meanings in this scene, However, all of my speculations are based on things that happen in the actual game. That being said, I believe that Noelle is clearly infatuated with Susie. Judging by her body language and her attempts to identify Susie's interests, I believe it is very apparent that Noelle possesses a physical attraction to Susie. I specify physical because, judging by their conversation, Noelle and Susie have not had a meaningful conversation ever since they first met. Most relationships are started from some kind of physical attraction, so this would be par for the course. However, this attraction also stems from Noelle's understanding of Susie, an understanding that I must say is partially misinformed. Noelle describes Susie as the good kind of scary. Noelle has completely fallen for the tough monster act. She doesn't play by the rules, and she doesn't respect authority. As someone who was nurtured and controlled by her mother her entire life, I am completely unsurprised over the fact that Noelle thinks highly of Susie. As we discussed in Susie's video, most of her mannerisms are a way of keeping people at a distance, either because she thinks they will make fun of her, or it makes her feel like she's in control. We also know that Susie takes note when people show her acts of kindness. She may have trouble expressing this, but it's clear that Susie values Noelle to some capacity as well. The amount of affection is different between characters, as we see this quantified using the tea made from different characters. We have already talked about Noelle's obsession with being afraid and how it could give her a feeling of nostalgia. A part of me wonders if Noelle sees Susie as a way to trigger those feelings. Noelle perceives Susie as rebellious and scary, two things that she really isn't. Not to sound stereotypical, but I believe that Noelle is more so in love with the idea of Susie rather than Susie herself. Perhaps I am being too pessimistic, and Noelle has a true, meaningful admiration for Susie's confidence. Also, some of Noelle's preconceived notions about Susie do have some truth to them. In very dire situations, Susie has been known to show great bravery. I should also mention that there are also emotional reasons that Noelle likes Susie as well. One big example is that out of all the people in Noelle's life who want something from her, Susie doesn't want anything from her. Noelle's mother wants her to act accordingly to her standards, to keep up appearances. Birdley wants help with his homework. Queen wants Noelle's help to open up more dark worlds and achieve world domination. And I would even imagine Rudy wants Noelle to visit him every day, although I'm sure that Noelle is more than happy to do that. The point is, Susie doesn't want anything from Noelle, and in fact wants to help her, even after her previous betrayal. I could imagine that spending time with Susie is such a breath of fresh air compared to what Noelle's had to deal with. I mean, come on, for the longest time her best friend was Birdley. Freaking Birdley of all people. Ugh. Okay, you know what? Maybe I'm being too mean to Birdley. Maybe Birdley's not so bad. Birdley swoops down and spoils the moment faster than a carton of milk with a trust fund. In an attempt to avoid Birdley's anti-cool debuffs, Susie leaves Birdley to look after Noelle. Birdley turns to Noelle and attempts to apologize. Noelle, more shocked than anything, assumes that Birdley is apologizing for things that he absolutely should be apologizing for. Attacking Noelle, assisting in her incarceration, calling her helpless behind her back, among other annoyances. No, Birdley is actually apologizing for leading Noelle on. Birdley, this whole time, was under the impression that Noelle liked him and that's why she was helping him. So not only has Birdley woefully misunderstood Noelle's feelings, but has also been under the impression that he has been doing her a favor by letting her help him study. Noelle is completely at a loss for words. The way I see it, there are two understandings for this event, and I truly hope that one of them is right rather than the other. Let's start with the good one. Birdley has caused a great deal of problems for Noelle. I already listed them, so I won't do it again. In the words of Queen, there's nothing wrong with him, he's just annoying. Noelle has been denied a proper apology, and has finally snapped, and is now taking her anger out on Birdley for everything he put her through today, and for the past few years. I should also mention that Noelle's sudden violent outburst could also be due to the fact that she still believes she is dreaming. She is completely at her wit's end within this dream, so now all she can do is repeat the same word. What? Even when Birdley is apologizing, he's making the whole situation about himself, and I think Noelle has finally reached the end of her patience. This is the preferred interpretation, and the one that I hope is correct. However, there is another one. The other interpretation is that the insinuation, even the possibility that Birdley could be with Susie, makes Noelle uncontrollably and inconsolably angry. Because of Berdley's misplaced wording, he has insinuated that there is already something going on between the two, and this sends Noelle over the edge. While this outcome is possible, I hope it's not the case, as this would make Noelle out to be an angry, spiteful, possessive person, and I don't want that for the reindeer baby. Either way, let's move on to what follows. What happens in between is kept intentionally vague, and if I'm being honest, this is probably my biggest issue with Chapter 2. I don't have many issues with Chapter 2, but the fact that Susie and Noelle take this long Ferris wheel ride, they are presumed to be somewhere out of Queen's grasp, only to then be intercepted moments later, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. After one of the coolest boss fights in RPG history, the Queen surprises the gang with one final attack which destroys their Megazord. The Fun Gang is at the Queen's mercy, but both sides are bloodied from the fight. Queen has limited power and limited time left. The Queen says this herself to implant the idea into Noelle's head that she is desperate and willing to do anything to win. Queen will crush Chris, Susie, and Rousey if Noelle does not create the Neo-Dark Fountain here and now. From the very beginning, Noelle has been afraid of everything, like a deer in headlights. The smallest and tiniest of creatures scare her, and she has never had the nerve to push past her fears because, in her own words, being afraid gives her a sense of comfort. The entire time that Noelle has been inside the Dark World, she has gone along with Queen's plans, either from threats, bargaining, or some other form of coercion. Noelle accepted this because it's just her. She never thought that highly of herself. She assumes herself weak and easy to control. She assumes that Susie didn't even know she existed. Noelle has never had the confidence to stand up for herself. Susie is a different story. Susie stared down the eye sockets of that giant robot, either through heroic bravery or poor depth perception. Susie did not back down to Queen no matter what. Noelle was there to witness this display, this massive battle which took place mostly over her. Noelle realizes how much she means to people. Now she realizes the lengths her friends are willing to go to protect her. It's here and now that Noelle stands, and with her will, finally speaks her mind. She will never be happy in a world that is controlled by Queen. Hearing this, Queen realizes that her actions were only hurting Noelle rather than helping. Before powering down, Queen tells Noelle to choose the world that makes her happy. These words echo within Noelle's mind, and they begin to make her ponder her time spent in the Dark World. If Queen wasn't there constantly telling her what to do or how to live, then the Dark World wouldn't be such a bad place. Of course, we know that the Dark Worlds must remain closed aside from Castletown to maintain the balance of light and dark, as Rousey mentions. This revelation of Noelle's has me worried of a potential dark path that could await her in the future. Her words about something being healed with just a little spell have me intrigued. I could easily envision her keeping her father alive inside of a dark world, even if it meant the potential end of the world. After exchanging some nice words and their goodbyes, Chris and Susie seal the Dark Fountain. Like before, you can go and visit Noelle in the hospital with her father. Rudy offers to defeat an especially difficult boss for Noelle, but she refuses to give him the game. This is a clear indication of how Noelle has changed. She is now more confident both in her ability and in her convictions, whether it comes to video games or real life. Now all she needs to do is stick up for herself to the Queen in the light world, and she's golden. Something I suspect will happen in a later chapter. Okay, and here we are. Something that you probably have been waiting for. This section is going to be a little different from the previous. For this section, we will be chronologically interpreting every scene as it happens, and as the route is concluded, I will analyze the route in its entirety. I am tempted to speculate on the route's existence now, but the actual content of the route is crucial for full context. So let's start from the beginning. The Snowgrave route itself centers around Noelle. It can be commenced as soon as she joins your party. To commence the Snowgrave route, you simply have to walk into the opposite direction from your current screen. Toby Fox's games have been structured from left to right. Similarly to other games, the implied way to progress is to travel to the right, but you still have the ability to travel to the left. This gives the developer a rare opportunity to place secrets on the left, because they know the player is much more comfortable traveling to the right. The Snowgrave route follows a strict, set, repetitive pattern. Begin a battle, defend with Chris, which will give you enough TP for Noelle to use Ice Shock. The effects of Noelle's Ice Shock are considerably different than any other major attack spell. Any of Susie's offensive spells allow the opponent to run away. Come to think of it, every single attack, either magical or physical, allows the opponent to retreat. Noelle's ice attacks freeze the opponent in place. We have already covered how the symbolic implications behind Noelle's ice powers are the fact that she's trying to preserve something, most notably her father. While the Darkners are preserved, they are heavily implied to perish. We have also discussed how the Darkners do not technically possess life and cannot be regarded as living beings. This would probably mean no harm, no foul, right? Unfortunately, no, considering what happens when the route is fully commenced. Some people still prefer to call this route the Weird Route. However, I believe Snowgrave is a much more fitting name. You have every opportunity to cancel the route up until you force Noelle to cast Snowgrave. After that, you are locked in. So technically, when you cast Snowgrave, the route is complete, and the only challenge you faced afterwards is the Spamton fight. Continuing to freeze enemies will eventually cause Darkners to run away from you rather than attack you. When you stumble across the Addison, which offers you the mannequin in the normal route, they ask you if Noelle is a friend or something else. Noelle ponders this question, and she wonders if she is really friends with Chris. You have the option to reaffirm the idea that Noelle and Chris are good friends, or you can proclaim that the two are something else. Doing this will continue the route. It's obvious to say that Noelle has never seen Chris in a romantic context, considering she blatantly states that there is no good interpretation to what Chris just said. And I have to say, I agree. There is nothing wholesome or romantic going on here. This is possession and manipulation, which will only get worse as the route continues. The Addison offers you the freeze ring as you are walking away. Noelle is completely disconcerted with whether or not Chris would ever buy her a ring. She is fairly confident that this would never happen, and, unfortunately, she is correct. Disregarding the obvious symbolism of matrimony, a ring has also been known to represent commitment, devotion, and control. Within the current context, this is not a kind gesture, but a declaration of ownership from you to Noelle. At this point, you have probably noticed that while I do mention Chris, I have mostly been using the word you to describe the actor in this scenario. There is no way I can be convinced that Chris is culpable in this treatment of Noelle. While it is very difficult to understand Chris's true intentions, this is absolutely the force of nature known as the player abusing their power over the people in this world. So understand from here on, when I am saying you, I am referring to a hypothetical version of you who would carry out this event. The game eventually confirms this by regarding you directly within the flavor text during the final Spamton fight. You speak the phrase, "Get it," to Noelle, and she assumes that you want to buy the ring. After repeating this phrase several times, Noelle comes to the conclusion that you are ordering her to get it. The Snowgrave route itself is filled with repetitive actions such as this. The repetitive nature of your words would imply that there is a mimetic persuasion at play here. Let me explain. Repetition is a persuasive tactic incorporated by many politicians and advertisements. If a phrase is repeated enough times, it increases the chance that someone will believe in the phrase. This isn't exactly what's happening, but the same rules apply. The word mimetic comes from the word meme. Memes can be funny ones, like this, but memes can be negative as well. The word mimetic pertains to constituting a system of behavior that is passed from one individual to another by imitation or other means. To simplify, you are using Chris to train Noelle to do what you say by using repeated commands. The control in which you have over Chris is being passed on to Noelle. This is all only enforced by how the Snowgrave route is played. Almost every single encounter is comprised of Chris using Defend to gain TP, then Noelle using Ice Shock. Repetitive actions used to enforce a specific kind of behavior. Every single action you take within this route is made to perpetuate this repetitive tactic of hypnosis. The reason why this works is because, to an extent, Noelle already has a profound trust in her friend Chris, and when you compound that with the fact that Noelle is an easily swayed target, this whole situation just turns out to be a recipe for disaster. Noelle begins to rationalize the situation as Chris trying to help her become more powerful. While in the room with the button, Noelle takes initiative and offers to stand on the button while you walk across. While walking through the threshold, you see Noelle fidget a bit, as if she wants to jump off. After you press the other button, Noelle walks across and thinks to herself what would happen if she jumped off the button and let Chris take a lethal blow of electricity. Noelle surprises herself with the sheer cruelty of this thought that she has about her childhood friend. To continue the route, you have to encourage her, which is very strange. From a purely tactical perspective, this doesn't make complete sense, as you are almost encouraging Noelle to fight back against you. Perhaps this dialogue is required to progress because it plays into Noelle's rationalization that you are helping her become stronger. Okay, so real talk, I just now realized this as I'm recording this audio. This is praise. Praise as in praise used to encourage behavior. It's actually a really funny parallel because in a normal route in this room, Noelle refers to you as a dog, but on the Snowgrave route, you are literally training Noelle like a dog by giving her praise. Good job, Toby. Good job. You are an intelligent doggo. The mimetic persuasion begins again. This time, the word proceed is repeated to encourage a specific outcome. Proceed does not mean to simply move forward. It means that one should continue a specific course of action. While repeating this word several times, Noelle will back herself up into the electrical barrier impeding your progress. It is kept vague the means in which Noelle does it, but it is implied that Noelle used her ice magic to destroy the puzzle. Much like with her relationship with Birdley, Noelle begins to make excuses, recontextualizing the situation to make it seem like Chris holds her best interests at heart. We know from the normal route that Noelle assumes that Queen is targeting her specifically because she perceives Noelle as weak. Noelle is a very smart person, but due to past trauma and her experience with her mother, her confidence isn't that high. I believe that the reason why she's focusing so much on getting stronger is because she believes that she is weak. You have perfectly identified and targeted Noelle's specific inhibitions and are using them against her. You have identified the codependent relationship between Birdley and Noelle, and instead of being a good friend and helping her stand up for herself, you have taken Noelle for yourself, for your own enjoyment. Noelle is trading Birdley for the player, and you are literally forcing Noelle to kill her previous codependent. Birdley approaches, and he is more confused than anything. His previous facade of superiority has fallen completely because of Noelle's demeanor. When Birdley approaches, Noelle doesn't even recognize him. She is still within her trance, and she perceives Birdley as just another enemy. Birdley demands to know what the heck is going on, and you continue to say the word, proceed, almost like a robot that has been made to give specific orders. Cold, unapologetic, emotionless orders that have been made with words and sheer force of will. Noelle is aware of what is about to happen. She knows she can't stop it, so she pleads with Birdley to simply run away and save himself. Even if Chris gets downed, she cannot move. She can still hear the voice in her head telling her to do what it says. When casting Snowgrave, Noelle's eyes turn white. The snow and ice cover the entire screen. Noelle is dazed, she feels sick, and she walks off. The ice preserves Birdley's body, and nothing else. You follow Noelle and take a shortcut to Queen's mansion. The final confrontation does not happen, and the Queen simply allows you to seal the fountain, until Spamton swoops in. The epilogue of a Snowgrave route is identical to the normal one, except for a specific scene within the hospital. Before leaving, Rudy asks to speak to Susie alone. You walk outside. While you are leaving, you can hear Noelle trying to calm herself down and convince herself that everything that happened was just a dream. She mutters to herself about a voice that is very different from Chris's voice, while also referencing that Chris has been acting very strange lately. If you allow her to go through her dialogue, you can rebuttal by telling her that it was not just a dream. If you don't have the patience to let Noelle finish her words, you can do something else. I have no idea why Toby included this or how anybody even found out that you could do this, but if you press the movement keys while Noelle is talking, you begin to walk forward, and Noelle notices you. If you don't move at all, Chris is seen by the door where Susie comes out when your vision returns. If you move, Chris is much closer to the wall on the right-hand side to imply that Chris had Noelle backed up against the wall. Susie doesn't suspect anything as she comes in between words. The two leave, and Chapter 2 ends the exact same way it does in the normal route. And strangely, it's somehow more unsettling. None of this had to happen. This turn of events only happens when someone purposefully makes every morally bankrupt decision they can make, while feeding into this manipulative persuasion tactic. All of this is just wrong. Which brings me to the biggest question in all of this. Why did this happen? What is the purpose of the Snowgrave route? When the first chapter of Deltarune was released back in 2018... 2018... Holy crap, has it been that long? Oh my god, it released half a decade ago, what the hell? Anyway, when it released, Toby specifically said in a twitlonger that there is only going to be one ending. Definitive, clear as crystal. One ending, that's all we get. However, with recent releases, he has teased the possibility of two endings, both in the game itself and on the Steam page. Game development, as you probably know, is very long and arduous. Many things can change as the scope of the game changes as well. Time passes, people think about things, they change their mind, they make changes to the game, etc. Without having Toby here himself to give comment, we can only speculate. Perhaps the ending of the game itself will be the same, but the context will be different depending on the actions of the player. For example, if Chris dies at the end of the game, it will either be tragic because we could not save them, or it will be tragic that their friends could not be saved from us. On a more meta side of things, I truly hope that the inclusion of the Snowgrave route was not something Toby felt pressured into adding. I believe that after having several years to work on the game, I believe he has changed his mind and he believes that he can do more with what he has. My only regret from this interpretation would be that I hope that if he made the decision, it was his decision rather than one that was influenced by his fans or his peers. Deltarune and the idea of it has changed significantly since its first release back in 2018, so it is near impossible to predict how it will change further into the future after chapters 3 and 4 will be released. But you can be damn sure I'm going to try. Which brings us to the future section. Noelle's arc for now has been completed, and it appears that the next group of characters to get some development are Caddy, Jockington, Undyne, and Toriel, with their own set of issues and story beats. I believe that her inquisitive and sneaky antics are not over yet. She deeply understands Chris on an emotional level despite their split, and it seems that she is the only one who is on to our presence. This plot will continue to develop. Either out of fear for her friends or morbid curiosity, she will continue her investigation into Chris's actions and one day even begin to perceive us, just as I believe Rouse has. She will eventually come to the conclusion that what happened in the Dark World was not a dream, and in her own way she will help the good accomplish their goal for a time and then something will happen. Either her father will pass, or he will become very close to death, or she will try to bring him back from the dead, and to save him, Noelle will see no other option but to open up a dark world inside the hospital. It is here that Noelle will be forced to make a choice between the world itself and her father's life. Maybe it will be the fourth dark world, maybe it will be the last one, maybe a compromise can be met where Rudy can just live in Castletown. Noelle is a smart girl, but her affection for the people she cares about can push her to do illogical things. As much as I love Rudy, he will most likely turn out to be a plot device, a living Chekhov's gun. Keep in mind there is nothing wrong with this plot point, it just makes Noelle's story seem like it can only go one way. Unless of course Rudy's illness is just a red herring. But to be honest, at this point, that would be very lame. Aside from this, I see other smaller things happening as well. The inevitable confrontation between Noelle and her mother, the potential development of a relationship between Noelle and Susie. Perhaps something comes up during the festival and it is interrupted by the opening of a dark world. When that moment comes, where Noelle will have to choose between the world itself and her father, I hope she makes the right choice. And with that, this has been a character breakdown of every single main character in Deltarune so far. It's done. Oh man, I honestly didn't plan this series out much. To be honest, I just wanted to do a video that tried to pin down Chris's motivations, and I just randomly said I was going to do the other characters as well, and at the time I was like, oh, I'll just do the other characters too, this wouldn't take long, would it? I guess I could take this time to do a little bit of a retrospective on the series as a whole. In hindsight, there are quite a few things that I left out concerning the characters that I wish I would have included. There's plenty of things that people in the comments section criticize me for not including as well, which I appreciate, by the way. I always enjoy when people criticize my videos, both positive and negative, because either way it helps me improve, and also gives me something to shoot for in the next video. My first theories, I seriously consider redoing them because they're not great when it comes to the audio and the actual composition itself. Let's see, what other things could I have done differently? The Chris video, in retrospect, is very short compared to the other videos. I do wish I would have made it longer, spent more time on it, but really it's my own fault for omitting the secret bosses. And I honestly regret not talking more about how Chris turns towards the camera to face us more. And in the Susie video, I probably would have gone more into Susie's aversion to killing. She threatens to kill Chris, but in actuality, I can't envision Susie killing someone. I am finishing this script right when the Rousey video is about to go up, so I can only imagine that I missed something in there too. I barely even talked about T-Theory, probably should have talked about that more. But hey, like I said in the beginning, if the game comes out and disproves my predictions, I'll do a follow-up video. And potentially I'll do another prediction, because unfortunately it looks like my worst fears are coming to be real. Deltarune is going to be released in waves. This is the official end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Goodbye. Okay, so, hey everyone. I'm well aware that the vast majority of you subscribed for Deltarune content, and it's that very reason why I'm making an announcement right now, rather than just doing it. I am going to be stopping all Deltarune content indefinitely for the foreseeable future. I have enjoyed my time making videos about this game that I like, but if you look back, I made videos about other stuff before my Deltarune theories, and I feel like the disproportionate success has influenced the way I make videos for long enough. I am well aware that my Deltarune videos do exceptionally better than my others, but even so, I still want to make videos about all sorts of things. I want to make Let's Plays and showcases and theories about other games, comedy videos, and other video essays, and now I'm going back to doing that. Exclusively. I'm putting Deltarune back on the shelf for now. At least for a while. You're probably assuming that I will just go back to making theory videos when chapters 3 and 4 come out, but no. Sure, I'll play them, maybe even do a live stream when I play them, but I won't be trying to make theories about them when they come out. Now, I say this now, but there is absolutely a chance that there's just going to be something so interesting about chapters 3 and 4 that I just have to make a video about it. And if that happens, then yeah, I'll probably make a video about it. But just assume that I will play the game, just probably won't make theory videos on it. With that out of the way, you're probably wondering what other video ideas I have on the way. I actually have several videos planned. While not a Deltarune video, I'll just say what it is, I want to do a character analysis of another character that isn't necessarily from Toby Fox. I'm going to be doing a character analysis video similar to this one about Soroba Ketsukane from Undertale Yellow, because I really liked her story and it'll give me an opportunity to play Undertale Yellow again. Aside from that, I also have another big video planned. I want to do a massive video breakdown of a game from my childhood called Spore. I don't think anybody's actually gone through the entire game and broken down every single piece of it, so I want to do that. I'm going to make the ultimate Spore breakdown and analysis from start to finish. Aside from that, I still have to get my Devil May Cry 4 video done. Seriously, if you're watching right now and if you subscribe to me for my Devil May Cry videos, I'm sorry. Trust me, I still want to do the videos. To be able to do the Devil May Cry 4 video I want to do, I have to get myself back up to a level of play that I haven't been at in several years. So ultimately, I might just have to compromise and just do an analysis of the story rather than the gameplay as well. So there you go. That's 3 technically non-Deltarune videos that I have on the docket. To be honest, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that Deltarune has been squeezed dry for content pretty much, so I see no better opportunity than now to move on from it. It's time for a change. Thank you all so much for watching. Goodbye.